Situated in Lake Huron, just off the Straits of Mackinac, lies Mackinac Island. A 20-minute ferry ride from the mainland takes us to this popular tourist destination. 3 ferry companies operate continually between the mainland and the island. The latest jet boats leave a giant trail of spray in their wake.
The Grand Hotel, the largest and most visible landmark on the island, stands out starkly on the landscape as we approach the harbour. Nearly 1 million visitors come to the island each year, and it is home to about 500 people, although in the summer months the local population swells to about 3,000. Motorised vehicles have been banned on the island since 1896. Aside from walking, visitor transportation is via horse or bicycle.
Boarding a horse-drawn carriage, we rode up Cadott Street. Several other horse-drawn vehicles, including the rubbish cart, occupied the road also. We passed the Grand Hotel, built of Michigan white pine and constructed by 2 railway companies in 1887. For those not registered as guests, there is an admission fee to enter the hotel grounds, and gentlemen are required to wear ties and jackets at dinner. The hotel has the largest colonial porch in the world.
Continual maintenance is required to keep the roads free of horse droppings, this being the downside to this form of transport. Stopping at a small rest point for lunch, our interest was diverted to an old horse-drawn fire engine and hearse, both of which were on display in the confines of the building.
Boarding another horse-drawn vehicle after lunch, we continued on up the hill, through the bush setting and passing the cemeteries, which have been used since 1830. Military personnel are buried in the Post Cemetery, while the other cemeteries cater for the Catholic and Protestant faiths. At Arch Rock, we stopped to view the shoreline 146 feet below. Geologists claim this arch was formed thousands of years ago by wind and water eroding soft rock below the arch, leaving hard breccia rock in place. From this position, we looked down on the beach, winding its way towards the north of the island, and could see Mission Point not far to the south.
Our next stop was Fort Mackinac, entering through the Avenue of Flags. In 1779, during the American Revolution, Lieutenant Governor Patrick Sinclair commanded British fur trading activities and a military garrison at the Straits of Mackinac. Fearing that American rebels would attack his fort in Mackinac, he moved his defences to Mackinac Island. As we entered the fort, a troop of scouts appeared heading in our direction. One of the many buildings occupied in the fort was the post schoolhouse, where the children studied in the late 1800s. Authentic furnishings still occupy their place in the classroom.
The North Blockhouse, one of 3 such buildings, was designed not only to withstand external attack, but also as a place of refuge if an enemy should break into the fort. To our right across the parade ground was the post hospital, and panning to the left were the officers' stone quarters, the officers' wooden quarters and the guardhouse. In 1781, the officers' stone quarters was a fortification in itself. It is the oldest building on the island. The large building on the left of the parade ground is the soldiers' barracks.
During the day, we were entertained with several demonstrations of music from instruments used at the fort back in the 1800s. Fort life in the 1800s was harsh. Court-martials and military trials were not uncommon. Many a soldier was accused of being AWL, insubordinate, or of neglecting his duty, usually due to drunkenness. We witnessed the reenactment of a trial which took place in 1885. The soldier in this case was Private Frank Herbert, on trial for disobeying an order in the course of duty. The outcome of the trial found the prisoner guilty of misconduct and sentenced to a fine of $8 from his pay and 10 days in the guardhouse.
As well as the music, rifle firing demonstrations were held several times during the day. In 1812, under the command of Captain Charles Roberts, the British captured Fort Mackinac. By arriving secretly under cover of darkness, they took up position above the fort and caught the Americans by surprise. For the next 3 years, the British held this ground, finally relinquishing it back to the Americans by treaty.
The quartermaster's store was stocked with army supplies, uniforms, and a great variety of garrison equipment. As well as being responsible for the horses, the quartermaster took care of hiring local craftsmen when no soldiers had the skills needed to maintain the fort buildings. In 1885, the soldiers were encouraged to lead clean lives. A post bathhouse, complete with tubs and hot and cold running water, was built to allow the soldiers to bathe once a week.
From the terrace of the tea rooms in front of the officers' stone quarters, we stopped to sample afternoon refreshments. And from this vantage point, 150 feet above the harbour, we looked out over the village and Marquette Park below. In the centre of the park stands a bronze statue of the Jesuit priest, Father Jacques Marquette, who came to the area in 1671. Some years later, he and Louis Joliet paddled canoes west and discovered the upper Mississippi River. Away to the west is the little stone Congregational Church. Below, at the bottom of the ramp, is the Trinity Episcopal Church, built in 1882.
We left the fort by the South Sally Port entrance and walked down the long ramp to Fort Street. At the base of the ramp is a replica of the Missionary bark chapel. In 1670, Father Claude de Blanc, a French Catholic Jesuit missionary, spent the winter on the island in a hut similar to this one.
Back down on Huron Street and close to the waterfront, traffic was still quite busy, with cyclists and horse-drawn vehicles moving up and down the road. Many grand houses of fine architecture graced the shoreline along this section of the island. This building was one of the first summer hotels on the island. It was constructed in 1852. Known as the Island House, it still serves as a resort hotel today.
Further along the street, we came to the Butterfly Centre, where we spent some considerable time relaxing in the quiet atmosphere of this garden setting, admiring some of the many species of these colourful creatures.
Granddad, one time there's Granddad in here.
Out on the street once more, we headed towards the wharf. Many shops advertised confections, an old term for candy. No one seems to know when Mackinac Island became identified with fudge, thousands of pounds of which are turned out each summer for tourists.
Back at the wharf and waiting for our ferry, we watched with interest as several ducks and seagulls scrambled for bits of food thrown from the crowd. Finally, our ferry arrived and was quickly secured to the wharf in readiness for boarding. The evening was quite cool, so once on board we settled for the comfort of the inside cabin for our return to the mainland and the end of a pleasant day on Mackinac Island.